interesting when I'm researching a case and it's linked to another case. It doesn't happen super often, but it's happened like 3 or 4 times to me, and this is one of those cases. Today, we will be talking about the disappearance of Donna Lass. And our case today begins in 1970 in South Lake Tahoe, California, with a 25-year-old woman named Donna Lass. Now, Donna Ann Lass was born on November 3rd, 1944, in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And after high school and college, she moved to San Francisco, and she got a job at Letterman General Hospital. She was a nurse, and this hospital happened to be located just north of where Paul Stein was murdered. And this will become important later on in our case, but Paul Stein is one of the confirmed victims of the Zodiac Killer. And so keep in mind that she worked right near the murder scene. Now, if you want to watch my video about the Zodiac Killer, I will link that up above. But, okay, let's go back to Donna. So, Donna left San Francisco, and she was living in State Line, Nevada, which is right along the California-Nevada state line. And she was like a brand new resident of State Line. She had just barely moved in to a new apartment at the Montverde Apartments on Pioneer Trail. She hadn't even really had time to make it her own. She slept there for just one night, and she was scheduled to work the next night. Donna worked at the South Tahoe Hotel and Casino, which was located in South Lake Tahoe. She was an emergency nurse at the hotel in the first aid room. On September 5th, Donna was scheduled to work the swing shift, which started at 6 p.m., and then she was scheduled to work till 2 a.m. She showed up for work at 6 p.m. like she was scheduled, and it seemed to be an uneventful night. But then, at some point during her shift, Donna just vanishes. We know she worked most of her shift. She had started an entry in the logbook at 1:45 a.m., but something had interrupted her, and she never finished that entry. And she never signed it, which was like the protocol. Now, this was back before digital medical records, so she was writing down like pen to paper complaints of a patient, and then the pen kind of eerily trailed down the paper. Donna's friend and a former roommate was supposed separate calls from an unknown male, and the caller claimed that Donna was going out of town for a family emergency. Donna's boss thought this was super weird. He felt like Donna would let him know personally if she needed time off or like if something had come up. So he called her mother, who was her like emergency contact in our paperwork, to make sure that everything was okay. But Donna's mother was shocked by this call because there was no family emergency, and her family knew right away that something was wrong. So her mother rushes to California and reports her daughter as a missing person. Once Donna was reported missing, police were looking for Donna's car, which they actually found very quickly in the parking lot of her apartment building. Now, Donna is nowhere to be found. She isn't in her apartment. It doesn't seem like she took off. All of her stuff was still inside her apartment. There was a bathroom light left on, but nothing, like no clues as to where she might have gone. There was no signs of like a struggle, no forced entry. The police were kind of stumped. The only things that police, with the help of her mother and former roommate, could determine were missing were her purse and the clothes that she was wearing. Police canvassed the neighborhood to see if anyone saw her come home that night, or I guess early that morning. But there were no witnesses. Had Donna come home, it was well after midnight. Not a lot of people were up then. No one saw her or anyone drive her car into the apartments and leave it there. One of the most mysterious things about this case, besides Donna being missing, was the mysterious caller. No one could figure out who this man had been who had called her work and her landlord, because this landlord was very new. Like, to know who her landlord was, it wasn't like she'd lived there for a long time. Donna's case went cold very quickly. There was not really a lot of technology to help solve her case. There were no cell phones to track, no social media to scour for clues, and I guess there wasn't even security footage at the hotel, so police couldn't look at that to try and see if she had left alone or what the circumstances to her leaving were. Donna was just gone, and due to the late hour that she went missing, there just weren't any witnesses. There weren't a lot of people even awake at that time. 6 months after Donna went missing, a lead would come. A lead that would tie Donna's San Francisco Chronicle got this really weird postcard in the mail. The postcard had a collage on the back and had this advertisement for Forest Pines condos in Lake Tahoe. And it's like an artist rendering of condos covered in snow near a wooded area. And then glued across the ad were different words and phrases that had been cut out and glued across it. Some of these phrases included the Sierra Club, around the snow, peek through the pines, past Lake Tahoe, and victim number 12. The postcard was postmarked Zodiac and featured the trademark circle cross feature. Like I said, the Zodiac Killer is a case that I covered very early on in my channel, but I will link that video if you have never heard of it or just want to check it out. But if you aren't familiar with the Zodiac Killer, the Zodiac Killer is a pseudonym finds no trace of Donna, and then her case just went cold again until 1974, when Donna's sister would get a Christmas card mailed to her home, which featured trees covered in snow. And this card was signed Donna, Guardian of the Pines. Now, Donna's remains were never found. There were never really any more clues into her case, and it still remains unsolved. In 2000, officers from El Dorado County Sheriff's Office met with members of Donna's family, and they said that they were pretty confident that Donna had been a victim of the Zodiac Killer. South Lake Tahoe Sergeant Tom O'Connor said in a press conference following this meeting, quote, "There are suspicions that Donna Lass was a victim of the Zodiac, but we haven't ever actually established that she was murdered, and we've never found her body," end quote. The theory with this case is that the Zodiac Killer noticed Donna when she worked in San Francisco and may have begun stalking her with the intention of killing her. But then Donna moved. But he couldn't get her out of his head, so he tracked her down and killed her. Police have said that they do believe Donna was abducted at work, possibly while she was making that last entry into the logbook, because of the way the pen dragged down the page, like if someone had come up behind her while she was writing and she jerked her hand. She also left behind a nurse's uniform and a letter, which indicated she left in a hurry and likely not on her own accord. And she never met up with her friend that morning like she had planned to do. The weird thing about this, police are pretty certain she was taken from work, but how did her car end up back at her apartment? She'd only lived there for one day. Police had said that there were piles of things that she had unpacked and she hadn't had a chance to put away. So had the Zodiac Killer followed her to Lake Tahoe? The connection to the Zodiac, the fact that she worked near where we know he was active, it's a very loose connection, but it can't be ruled out. The Zodiac Killer was never caught, and no one knows who he is, or I guess even if he is still alive. So we don't know how he operated. We don't know if he stalked his victims, or if they were just crimes of opportunity. But a man had to have been involved, because there was a man who called both her landlord and her work, saying that she would be gone for a while. Now, I'm anything, oftentimes that was the end of the road as far as the investigation goes. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about this case. Do you think that the Zodiac Killer was involved, or something else completely? The only thing I can think, if the Zodiac was stalking her and came and abducted her from work, was that he threatened her, made her tell him where she lived if he didn't know that already, because he could have. He drove her car back. He had also threatened her to get the information about her work and her landlord so that he could give himself kind of a head start before people started looking for her. That's the only thing I can think of, unless maybe she was dating someone that no one knew about, and so that man already knew that information, like where she lived, where she worked. Let me know what you guys think. I just quickly want to cite my sources for this video. I got